Record button and we will get started. So good afternoon. Welcome to the first ECRN meeting of 2021. Oh, it sounds kind of futuristic, doesn't it? 2021, as long as 2020 seemed like 7 years or something. 2021, pretty futuristic. So welcome. This is our meeting from 3 to 4 o'clock today. You can see the agenda on the screen. We'll do introductions in a minute. Then we'll get to some cool climate news. We'll look at a little hot science. We'll look at the Newsom climate budget very quickly, a little review of some of the interesting legislation in Sacramento coming around climate adaptation and mitigation, and then updates from you. So hold on to something. We'll have brief updates, but if you have something to share with the group, we'll have a little bullet for it there. And then we'll get to our main event, which is the spotlight today on one of our members of the ECRN, the California China Climate Institute, and Fan Dai and her folks will be presenting there. And then I'll wrap it up by updating you on our carbon removal kind of sub-network that we have formed. So that's our agenda. And let me stop sharing so we can see everyone's faces, and let's do introductions. I'll yell out your first name and you can tell us your full name and who you're with. So Jennifer, we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Perrin. I'm with the California China Climate Institute.
Great. Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Gordon. I'm also a climate fellow with the California China Climate Institute.
Great, welcome. Bill Collins?
I'm Bill Collins. I'm in Earth and Planetary Science on campus and Climate and Ecological Sciences at Berkeley Lab.
Great, welcome. Aaron?
Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Diaz. I'm with Foundation Relations and Corporate Philanthropy at UDAR.
Great. And where is your background there?
My background is an arts background, but I'm, I work with foundations on campus. Yeah.
No, I was thinking, where
Your
is
Zoom
your
background?
Where is
Oh,
your
my,
Zoom
oh,
background?
yes. No,
like
sorry.
your background too.
That's Mount Shasta.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Very nice, Aaron. Deborah, you're next.
I'm Deborah Summers. I'm with the Intellectual Property and Industry Research Alliances office.
Great, welcome. Carl? Carl?
You're
on
muted.
mute. Carl Bloomstein, CIEE.
Yeah, I'm Carl Bloomstein. I'm the director of the California Institute for Energy and Environment.
Thanks, Carl. Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Siegel. I'm a research fellow with the Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment.
Welcome, Katie. Hi, Gail. Gail, you're next.
Gail Brager with Center for the Built Environment and Center for Environmental Design Research.
Great. And next rectangle over, Therese.
Hi, work with both Carl and Gail, so CIEE and CBE.
Great, wonderful. Drop down a level, Ted.
Ted Lamb, also a research fellow at the Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment.
Great, welcome, Ted. Michelle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Michelle Moskowitz in the Government and Community Relations Office on campus. I'm a government relations representative and represent the whole campus.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Ken, you're next.
Got to be quick with the unmute. Ken Alex, I'm the director of Project Climate, which is part of the Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment.
Great. Irna?
Hi, everyone. I'm Irina Dronova. I'm an associate professor in 2 departments, Environmental Science, Policy and Management, and Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning.
Great. Welcome. Fan Dai?
Hi, Fan Dai with the California China Climate Institute. Hi, friends.
Great. Welcome. Fan will be presenting in a minute. David?
David Ackerley, Dean of Rouser College of Natural Resources.
Welcome, David. And Ethan?
Hi, Ethan Elkine, Director of the Climate Program at CLE with half the squares on the Zoom here.
We'll put little marks. Eric?
Eric Lee, the Research Administrator, and I work with Carl and Teresa at the California Institute for Energy and Environment.
That's great. Welcome, Eric. I think we got everybody. Anybody, did we miss anybody on introductions? Great, okay. let's go on to, let me share, and you can see my screen again here. So we always try to give you a couple of fun things to take away for that nighttime reading. There are, as you know, a lot of articles and reports and things on climate change. It's a huge amount of work to try to even keep up a bit. So we give you each month 3 things that we think are kind of top of the line. The first one here, and I'll put the links in the follow-up email, but also in the chat box later. First one, if you're not subscribed to Bill McKibben's column regularly on climate now in the New Yorker, you should be. It's really good. Every week it's interesting. I learn things all the time. And the one I really liked in this latest one was about the connection between plastics and the plastic industry and the fossil fuel industry. My neighborhood is doing a big anti-plastics thing that we're starting, trying to cut down on all the plastics that we end up using. But the political and economic connection with the fossil fuel industry is kind of the highlight of Bill McKibben's section within the newsletter. Second one, end of the year, you get all the best of 2020s and all. Here were a couple of them on climate. Scientific American said their 5 biggest climate stories were, I'd say, rather obvious. The wildfires both here and in Australia, the huge hurricane season we had here, 30 hurricanes, the influence of COVID on reducing emissions, but maybe not as much as you would think. The great heat, both in this country and in many other places around the world, one of the warmest years yet. And then near the end of the year, Biden at least being elected and then starting now to reverse a number of the policies from Trump 4 years. The Atlantic's top 5, I thought, were actually more interesting. China, with the big announcement in September to get to net zero by 2060 and to be actually reducing emissions starting by 2030. The Atlantic named that their #1 climate story of the year, and I would agree. The EU came in kind of second in the Atlantic's derby here for their big upping of their goal for reducing emissions to 55% from 40 by 2030. They also had COVID in. They had a nice section, and you'll see this in their little summary on how climate really started to look more like an economic issue in 2020 in many different ways. And finally, the bill that was passed in Congress on HFCs. The third thing I put here, and obviously is a ton just lately on the Biden-Harris administration. I gave you 2 things here. The bottom one is a collection, so it makes it kind of easy just to go to that site for the White House and get a whole set of things on the executive orders and other things on climate. And the article from the New York Times just above that gives more kind of the flavor of some of these, particularly in terms of, as the headline says, emphasizing jobs and other sweeping actions. So we'll put those in the chat box for you. I will quickly just talk about Governor Newsom's climate budget, the January budget that's out now, and we'll go through a set of negotiations with the legislature between now and June. Has about $4 billion for climate and the environment, all headed towards, this is a quote from our friend Kate Gordon, a climate neutral, climate resilient, and equitable future for California. So within that $4 billion, here are a couple of the highlights. There's $1 billion for wildfire and forest resilience, and the double star there. This is the one where I could find that research, it's not a big part of the 1 billion, but where research got called out as a good part of what they're going to be doing with wildfire and forest resilience. There's about $1 billion for zero emission vehicles, for both electric and hydrogen, for infrastructure, for equity issues around EVs and all. There's a couple of big pots of money here for natural and working lands, for ecosystems restoration, adopting the 30 by 30 goal. And for flood management, a good amount of money there too. And finally, these are again just highlights within the 4 billion. There's a fair amount around equity and climate and equity and energy, focusing on local air pollution, on safe drinking water, on various issues there for communities in California. And finally, about 25 million in the proposed budget for workforce training and what they're calling a just transition roadmap to figure out and not leave behind workers and communities that have been very fossil fuel based, and we're going to be making this transition, so let's help out. One more thing on research and money is this statement that's at the bottom. They didn't assign money for the next set of research on climate, which will be called the 5th assessment. But you can see the quote here, and they felt big enough about it to put it in the kind of summary document that they're looking to the legislature to provide some money for this, and there will be a more robust climate research program that will obviously have import for us. There's a link at the top where you can get, and I'll put this in the chat function, where you can get all this information and more. And then very quickly, there's a lot of climate legislation, and this whole page is mostly around adaptation. Show you another page in a minute with a little more on mitigation. We won't go into these, but just I think the takeaway is there's a lot of interest, a lot more now in Sacramento than there was even a couple of years ago from the legislature in dealing with sea level rise and heat and the other wildfires, certainly. There is a move again this year. It got squashed last year to create a big multi-billion bond issue that could go on the ballot November 2022 for climate and climate resilience. See on the next page, these are more things that are on the mitigation side, a whole set of things going on here. So a lot more interest in Sacramento in legislation, and certainly there will be back east. Let's do member updates. We take just quick, brief updates. So anything you have that you want to share with the group, and I will stop sharing the screen so we can see each other. Carl, you had something first, I believe. Carl Bloomstein.
Yes, Bruce is going to send around a notice of a seed grant program that is being funded by NL on sustainability. There's going to be an opportunity for relatively small, but I think overhead free awards around 40K, something like that. I think people are encouraged to submit ideas. It's a very short fuse. I think they have to make a presentation to the sponsor on the 2nd of February, which is next Tuesday.
Okay. Thanks, Carl. Bill, you want to say a couple minutes about your, or a minute maybe, on your carbon removal initiative, the big initiative up at the lab?
Sure. Thank you, Bruce. So we have launched an initiative called, this was my choice, but NEST, which stands for Negative Emissions Science and Technology. And the first component of that is a set of seed grants that we are soliciting. This is through what's known as LDRD, or Laboratory Directed Research and Development grant money. We held a town hall today that was attended by close to about 90 people. And with the goal of getting some projects started in October of 2021 that would last for a couple of years. And this would lay the foundation, we hope, for the laboratory to use this as a foundation toward a much larger and permanent effort in negative emissions. So the backdrop to this, for those who aren't familiar, is that there is the conclusion of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is that there's essentially no way to hold the planet at 1.5 degrees Celsius without invoking a deployment of negative emissions, meaning removing carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere that's already been emitted. And it's at the scale of it, it's almost like reversing the fossil fuel industry by turning it upside down. We have to remove, we're currently putting in 40 gigatons per year. We have to remove 20 per year by the end of the end of this century. So the lab is thinking about this stuff, and we're getting going. I'm leading this initiative, and we hope to have some grants selected by April. So that's the news.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Who's next on a update or a piece of news for us? Ted and Ethan, you want to mention your report, your since we're on carbon removal?
Yeah, I can let Ted or Katie. They were all co-authors on it.
Well, one of you.
Yeah, sure. So I presented on a month ago, early December, I want to say, on our convening process that we held with a range of state leaders on policy needs and opportunities for accelerating carbon removal and carbon sequestration deployment in California. We just released that report at the end of December and held a webinar yesterday with close to 125 people, including presentation from Uduak Jotuntuk, the state oil and gas supervisor. Had some interesting ideas in the document, but also I think we have an opportunity through CLE to communicate with CalGEM and with some of the regulators who might be in charge of getting these projects off the ground. So potentially could serve as a bit of a link between the lab community doing the hard science and the permitting teams that actually want to get the projects done.
Yeah, policy and all of that. Good. You have the first report is on your website on the engineered, but then the natural and working lands one will be out soon.
Yeah, month or so, 6 weeks. But I'll drop a link in the chat.
And how about the webinar? It sounded interesting yesterday. Is there a link to that on the website? Is it recorded that we can hear or not?
It was recorded. There will be a link. I don't think it's ready yet. I think that takes a couple of days. Yeah.
Thank you. Who else has an update or news for us? Okay, let's go on to our spotlight. I'll stop sharing my screen. I already did stop sharing my screen. Okay, how old am I? Too old some days. Fandai and California China Climate Institute begin sharing the screen, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bruce, and especially for this opportunity for us to share what we are doing at the Institute. And I think some of you might have heard what I'm going to say today, so sorry for repeating myself here, but really exciting to share some of our recent developments and of course our priorities for 2021, and looking forward to more opportunities to work with all of you. Myself and my colleagues Jan Perrin and Jessica Gordon, who both are on the line today, would be doing this presentation. I'll start with, let's go to the next slide. So yeah, just quickly about the Institute, I think we put just a snapshot of our advisory committee here. It is, most of you know the history of the Institute. We are still a quite young organization, and we are still working quite closely with Tsinghua University and Minister Xie's Institute on those research and dialogue. And we are aiming to be a UC-wide initiative that it is housed here at CLE and co-hosted by College of Natural Resources and the School of Law. Since we established in September 2019, we have set up some pillar programs and signature initiatives, which we'll be sharing in a minute. So really quickly about our priorities in 2021, we kind of summarize in kind of two big priorities for the Institute. The first one is really assisting, or we can say providing recommendations and advice to the Biden-Harris administration when it comes to US-China climate partnership. And as I mentioned before, we recently organized some offline dialogue to kind of serve the purpose of getting ideas of how the US-China Climate Working Group could be reestablished. And Governor Brown actually wrote a commentary recently on LA Times with his opinion of how the working group should be restored. So this is, some of the work we have spent months to lay the ground, and very exciting now we have the new administration, and looks like both the US federal government and the Chinese national government are ready to restart some of those conversations. So the Institute will be doing whatever we can to help facilitate some of those dialogues moving forward. And that is one of our priorities for this year. Secondly, we had been doing some subnational climate dialogues with Chinese provinces and cities. We did a dialogue with Guangdong province, and we are doing another dialogue next week with Nanjing city, which is part of Jiangsu province. And then there are several other subnationals we're talking to. For all those subnational dialogue this year, our priorities are really around their pathways to get to peaking, carbon emission peaking before 2030, and their long-term pathway to get to carbon neutrality by 2060. Those provinces and cities we're talking to are really the pioneering subnationals in China. So really excited about the plans they're making, and we're hoping to share the lessons and policies here in California and be kind of cooperating with them and in the course of making those plans more ambitious in China. The third priority is really serving as the secretariat and facilitator of the California-China MOUs. We are helping Governor Newsom's office in negotiating an MOU with China's Ministry of Ecology and Environment that is hoping to be finalized soon, and we're hoping this signing will be hoping in February, and so we'll keep you posted of how that goes. And under that California-China MOU, we are planning to ramp up a set of training, research, and dialogue activities consistent with what the Institute is already doing. And then last but not the least is really to working in collaboration with the UK COP26 leaders on low carbon transportation issues, especially given the importance of ZEF in California's plans and policy. And we're hoping to connect, especially with the research that is happening on campus. We're hoping to connect and link those research with the policy making process. So these are just a snapshot of our priorities this year. And in all of the priorities, we are doing our best to make sure we collaborate with the campus, and we loop the faculty and the community on campus in what we are developing here, and really wanted to making sure that the process we are undergoing, for some of them, we were not able to do that too publicly, but we're hoping during this process, we can get more faculty and researcher engaged in. And then moving on to the pillar programs, I guess some of you might be already very familiar with the 3 pillar programs, as I already mentioned. The first one is the climate research program. The second is leadership training program. And third is the climate dialogue program. I'll just pause right here and have my colleagues, wonderful policy fellows, Jen and Jessica, to walk you through of those 3 programs. And we might have some time for some questions and for discussion. So Jen, turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Fen. So to start here with the climate and research program. So this is one of our main pillars. And so we have a series of research projects that we're working on right now with partners in the US on campus, including people at the meeting today and at other UCs, and then also in China. And so two specific projects that we're working on right now. One is looking at subnational climate policy and action, and another one on mid and long-term climate goal setting and pathways for carbon neutrality. And so kind of underneath this umbrella of this carbon neutral pathways, we have these different research themes, including nature-based solutions, looking at forestry, agriculture, wetlands, transportation and zero emission vehicles, carbon pricing and climate finance, including looking at this, kind of post-COVID green stimulus, energy efficiency and energy storage, climate change adaptation and resilience, and then also non-CO2 gases such as methane. We're also researching subnational climate plans and actions, as I mentioned, US-China collaboration, and then looking at, really how do we link this research into the deployment and piloting of climate solutions. And now I'll pass it over to Jen.
So in addition, as Fan was mentioning, we have our Environment and Climate Leadership Training Program, which aims to provide capacity building to help support government implementation, largely in China. So really focused at Chinese government and business executives, helping to support capacity building there. Originally, some of this was going to be in person, with inviting Chinese colleagues to come to California. Of course, COVID-19 interrupted those plans, but we held a successful virtual symposium back in September of last year, which several of the people on this call actually participated in. So including faculty members from UC Berkeley, as well as representatives from California state agencies and other thought leaders in this space. And we're continuing to plan virtual sessions for later in this spring and summer, again, to provide a forum for facilitating information exchange and capacity building between the US and China. And we hope that in the future, we'll be able to resume kind of an in-person exchange as well. That's more of a study tour that offers more opportunity for in-person networking as well. And this is all part of supporting the implementation of the MOUs that Fan was alluding to. So we serve as an implementing partner for several MOUs between the state of California and China. On a variety of climate-related topics, including air quality issues, carbon pricing, clean energy, and innovation. And so we host these training sessions on a wide suite of issues under the climate theme. In addition, we host these high-level US-China dialogues, so often as a bilateral conversation between very senior officials between the US and China, but sometimes also bringing in other stakeholders from the region. For example, last fall, we held a Trans-Pacific climate policy in the Trans-Pacific dialogue, which also included leaders from South Korea and Japan as well. So looking at how we might help facilitate multilateral collaboration across the Asia Pacific, in addition to the bilateral US-Chinese relationship. And as Fan was alluding, we also do these dialogues at the subnational level, so with Guangdong province and Nanjing. So working on those more specific areas of sectoral collaboration that we can help advance. So sharing lessons learned and best practices from the California context that might be applicable in the Chinese context and vice versa. And many of these dialogues are focused on kind of carbon neutrality or long-term climate goals and carbon neutral pathways. These are often more, high level, very private sessions. So sometimes we're not able to publicize these events, but they are things that we're doing kind of behind the scenes as a means of enhancing dialogue in the bilateral relationship and enhancing information exchange as well as capacity building. And then finally, in addition to those activities, we are also kind of ramping up on our kind of events and webinars that we're able to host, featuring, issue experts, either, research affiliates with the Institute itself or other UC faculty members or other issue experts in the field. And so this is a set of some of the events that we have coming up. So in a couple of weeks on February 10th, we'll be having a session focused on climate competition and cooperation with China under a Biden-Harris administration. We're fortunate to have opening remarks from Governor Jerry Brown at that session, the president of Energy Foundation China, David Sandalo from Columbia University, and Joanna Lewis from Georgetown. So that should be an excellent session, very interesting to look at the US-China relationship, post the US election and kind of where we think climate policy is headed in both of those countries. So we hope that many of you will be able to join us for that. Shortly after February 23rd, we're going to be doing a deeper dive on a book talk on China Goes Green. So a conversation on that book. Throughout the spring, we have several webinars focused on nature-based climate solutions. So looking at how natural working lands, agriculture, forestry, and other carbon sequestration, things like this can help with climate solutions. So we have a set of probably half a dozen of webinars scattered throughout the spring semester. So stay tuned for those if you're interested in nature-based climate solutions. We'll also be holding some sessions on China's carbon neutrality goal, the big announcement back last September about seeking carbon neutrality by 2060 and kind of looking at the implications of that, as well as deeper dives into China's 14th five-year plan, both at a broad policy level, but then also at a sectoral level, looking at specific sectors like industry or transport, for example. So these are some of the things that we have coming up, and we're happy to answer any questions that anyone might have, or take feedback if people have suggestions about things we might want to focus on in the future.
What time are these webinars?
Sure, so they'll all be posted on our website. Some of them are already up under the events tab of the California China Climate Institute webinar website. But the ones coming up are often at 5:30 p.m. Pacific because it's morning in China and we often have Chinese collaborators. So they're often evening time, but you can get all the details will be posted on our website. And if you're not signed up we have a newsletter as well that goes out that publicizes these events. So you can also sign up for our newsletter on our website and get direct notifications about those events.
Great. I have a question to start, and then we'll jump in on others. Can you go back a few slides to the one where you had some of the issues, some of the key issues listed? Yeah. So this is a very interesting and good list. Can you tell us, are there, which of these do you think the Chinese leaders you're working with are most interested in or excited about? I mean, they're all good and they're all important. What are their, maybe of this list, their top topics?
Yeah, I'll take a crack here, and Jen and Jessica, feel free to chime in. So I think right now, really, Bruce, the umbrella research project at the Institute is the carbon neutrality pathway study. It's called Getting to Zero. So we're basically approach this from two perspectives. The first perspective is looking by different sectors. So taking a sectorial approach, breaking that down to energy, transportation, industry, and natural and working land sector. This is a really good approach that the Chinese, especially based on those conversations we had, they showed great interest in adopting this approach while they're making their long-term climate plans. So that's a first perspective. Second perspective is by looking at not just the national level planning, but at the subnational level. We're working with Guangdong, which is the biggest province in China in terms of its GDP and I think population as well, but I could be wrong on population. So there are some really big Chinese provinces and cities are working with us. From a subnational perspective, it's a very interesting dynamics in China that how they were having troubles coordinating with the national government, how California was able to set our own standards and policies and be as the pioneer here. So a lot of those experience on subnational leadership were actually really interesting topics so far and shown great interest from the Chinese participants and policymakers we've talked to. So really, these are just a kind of a running list of what the research covers. But really, I think the umbrella and the big focus is carbon neutrality pathway.
Thank you. Questions, comments? We have a group of 20, so you can just unmute yourself and fire away with a question or comment.
I have a question, Fan and team. Are you guys, I may have missed it, but are you guys planning to put out sort of policy briefs, reports on the topics that you identified? Or is it purely meant to be discussional and sort of kept among the among the parties? I assume you'll be putting out some sort of work product after each of these events, or what's kind of the rollout plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Ted. We do have a plan to roll out some white paper or working papers on those topics. We currently had one that's already posted on the website, which is on the ZEF policies, and we did a comparison between California and China. Moving forward, we do have other topics that we're lining up some working papers to be published first on the website, and also just wanted to mention, we are also putting together what's called a states climate action database that we looked into the US states climate actions. And we're trying to collect data from the Chinese subnational action as well, and hoping to use this as a platform that could demonstrate and illustrate what are the current actions being taken at subnational level, both in the US and China.
But could you stop screen share so we can see everybody?
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you. I have a question, I think from most of our institutes. Who is funding your institute? Where's the funding coming from?
Yeah, so far, our current operating budget comes from the Hewlett Foundation. They gave us a 2-year grant that we were probably going to extend because COVID, that we didn't actually spend that much as planned. But the core funding at the Institute right now is from the Hewlett Foundation. And on those research projects and dialogues, depending on which topics, we did get some small grant support from other foundations like the Energy Foundation and Rockefeller Brothers Fund. I think we recently got a grant from the Climate Imperative Foundation on the pathway study and 5 years plan research.
Thank you.
Is there potential for collaboration with the new program on net carbon reduction that Bill is among the leaders, I guess? Bill, is that the right way to describe it? Or are you the leader? You're muted, Bill.
Which bill are you addressing?
You. I'm sorry, Bill. I meant that since you're one of the leaders of this program, and I note that the California China Institute is also interested in nature-based solutions. Is there potential for connection? I mean, that's what this network was built for.
There could be, and yeah, so there definitely could be, and we are open to that. We've talked about it. We don't have a formal plan for it yet.
maybe that's something we can look into. Jessica can look into.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I had
I'm
a,
going to I'm going to say a few things just at the end in a couple of minutes about the work we're doing mainly on campus to kind of organize the network of both from the natural side and the engineered side on carbon removal. So we could maybe talk there too about a link.
Can I ask just a question, Fan? I was looking at some of the climate legislation being introduced now by state lawmakers, and I noticed that Ed Chow had a bill that was establishing the California China Climate Institute at UC Berkeley, which obviously has already been established. So I'm just curious what the background is with that bill. I mean, it's obviously a bill that the UC system-wide office will flag and ask about if they haven't already. But I'm just curious, is that an attempt to get the state to provide funding or to have recognition from the state or something, or what's the, and I assume he's come to you or you've gone to him or somehow.
Yeah, happy to provide a background. And this is actually a proposal that was supposed to be, I think the draft was actually putting together while we just got established, but because of COVID, that kind of delayed the process. Now it's in 2021's agenda. So that's long story for short in terms of why you're seeing it now versus the bill should probably be, maybe last year while we just got established. And then in terms of the communication, yes, we, I think there was an interest in, I guess it's less on funding, but more on kind of recognition of the Institute's role in facilitating exchange between California and China, and as well as kind of formalizing this relationship that we have with Governor Newsom's office, as well as other state agency for, I think was to kind of help advance the work in the future.
So I assume you'll be working with him on tweaking the language so that it makes sense.
Yes, I think there had been some communication with both the UC and Berkeley side on the language previously. I actually haven't looked at the language yet on this new version, but I believe it should be mostly in line with what we were thinking.
Okay, well, we can.
Thank you. I was going through the legislative list yesterday and I did a double take when I saw, what is it, AB 39 to establish the institute. I thought, wait a minute, they're going already. So I understand now from the COVID that squashed a lot of bills. Who else has a question or a comment here? Carl's question about, so we could broaden that a little. Are there areas that you are looking to get more links to various experts on campus on certain topics?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically, as you all know, we only have a really small team here at the Institute. And so on research, really, our hope is to aggregate and amplifying what's already being done at the campus, and faculties are doing research on those topics. That's our goal. I think in terms of specific areas, right now we work quite closely with ARD on scoping plan and transportation side of policy, and I know Ethan, we work together on that white paper. I think on nature-based solution and natural working lands, that's where I'm looking at Jessica as our in-house expert on this topic. But this is about what we have. So a lot of those topics we rely on, the faculty and researchers, and sometimes we have to subcontract with experts even outside of this network.
Other questions or comments for Fan and her team? Okay, well, thank you. And certainly, we're here, we're kind of a small network, but we're here to try to make links on campus amongst the different institutes and centers. So please use us if you have questions about making it easier for you to reach out to certain expertise on campus. Okay, thank you very much for presenting, and good luck with it's very exciting work. Great to see. Let me do one more item here for today. So let me go back to sharing. And by the way, I'll put the links to the things that I talked about earlier on Cool Climate News in the follow-up email. Something was going on with the chat function that didn't like my copy and paste. So last thing, we talked to you a little bit in our last meeting that we've formed basically kind of a sub-network of this network focused on experts on campus and at the lab who are working on carbon removal. So this is negative emissions territory, and just what Bill talked a bit about the NEST initiative up at the lab. So we've completed here, and I showed you the cover here of 2 different rosters, totaling about 50 researchers on campus and on the and at the lab. So we've got that, and I'll send that out with a follow-up email. And you can see who's working on what, who's working on forestry and carbon removal, who's working on wetlands, who's working on direct air capture, all the kind of whiz-bang things that are going on in the engineered world. And we're going to be expanding that on campus to have more. We kind of have a hole right now in terms of who are the social science people that could be working or maybe working already on this huge topic of negative emissions and carbon removal. We're going to do a quick survey of our network in the next few weeks to get their priorities. How can this network help them in the biggest way? And then have a Zoom discussion to kind of set those priorities. I'm going to talk with Bill Collins about can we assist in somehow building the teams that they're forming now at the lab to go after certain parts of that 1.5 million that they have for the initial initiative up the hill. We can go back. We did one meeting of a few of us with state leaders on priorities from OPR and from resources. And that ties into number 5. Again, these are the possible things we're going to get into in the next couple of months, but CLE, as you heard, has got a couple of reports now on barriers and solutions around policy and law for carbon removal, and there are considerable issues there. It's not all about hard science. So we may then, and I've had one conversation with CLE to assist with how can we help get some of the barriers that were identified or solutions, how can our folks on campus help to advance work on those solutions. So that's our new little sub-network. Thanks to David Ackerley, got a little money from campus and a little money from the lab to do this. So part-time for the part-time network. That is everything for our agenda today. Are there any other questions or items or comments that people want to relay? Okay. Nice to see you all. Stay safe. Lots going on, and be well. And we will see you in a month. Okay. And I'll send a follow-up email with some of the links and things from today's talk. Thank you to Fan and her team, and links also to the Cool Climate News and all. Be safe.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce. Bye-bye.
Thanks.